I wanted to make this recording because unfortunately the Zoom call we had, the Q&A, I didn't put the recording on. So in our Facebook group, Stephen, one of the participants, set up this still life, and this is the painting that he started. This is just a start. And I use Photoshop to show how to modify some of the, to strengthen some of the things that Stephen had done. So one of the things that I teach in this course is seeing the color of light. And there are many factors that have to be considered when doing that. One of the things is exaggerating the color and temperature of an object or a scene to denote the type of day. So this is a sunny day type of situation. He set his still life up near a window, and we've got strong direct light hitting certain objects. I like that he used some white objects because it's a good color to learn some things on. One of that being that, white is a dead or lacking in color paint, pigment, however you want to refer to it, because it's not a color. So, but when it's hit with sunshine, and it doesn't matter really what time of year, that light is going to be warm. Although I take that back, you're going to get different effects, and this gets into a much deeper scenario. But like Monet painted haystacks and other things at different times of year and different times of day, because wherever the sun is in the sky is going to affect the type of strength of warmth and color that is used to depict that sunshine. But on white objects, to show that white is being hit by sun, we want to exaggerate. We want to go with an exaggerated color, but yet keep in mind the object. So say in the case of like these green leaves, this little bit of yellow flower that's being hit, this tabletop, they are clearly different than the white. Like this here, just next to each other, you can see this tablecloth, this green tablecloth hit with warm light is a darker value, obviously a different color than the white. So we factor in the objects and the color of the objects, but we're not painting the color of the objects. We're painting the light on those objects. And we want to show that warmth. So in the case of something like that, because green, just by the nature of it, is a warm color, we would use as a starting note, this is not the final and finish of the painting, this is a foundation color that we would use to describe the light conditions of and how that green is being affected by light. So in the very beginning stages, we keep it ultra simple. As you progress and you start to see color in a more intimate way, you really have an understanding of how it works, you can get into choosing colors that may be mixed even for starting notes. But for the most part, even as a seasoned painter or seasoned colorist, you want to keep things as simple as possible. So as you can see here, I've used yellow, and in this these white parts. I've used a little bit of yellow, keeping in mind that it's a white object, but I want to warm that white up to show that sunlight has hit those spots. But the table is, first of all, a darker value, and it's a different color, but yet it's also being warmed up by the sun. So a good starting note for this area would be something, say, like a cad yellow light with no white in it. This could be a cad lemon with a lot of white. So you're simply just tinting the white for these white objects. Then we've got the greens. This is like, this plant is a very warm colored plant in general. So the sunlit areas are potentially darker than even this tabletop, or they could be similar. I mean, I'm working from a photo here, and my guess is that if I was working in person, they could either be similar in value or darker. It's hard to tell from a photo, but it's definitely going to be a warmer type yellow. So when you compare these yellows, you can see that this is a warmer yellow than this. It's more saturated, it has more yellow color in it, and it's a little bit of a darker type yellow. Doing still life from nature, or with your natural eye, is key to really be able to decipher these types of things. Now we have these objects that are not hit by light, and typically on a sunny day, whether it's a scene or it's a still life object, the shadow areas are generally cooler than, there's like a sharp marked difference. You're going to have darker shadows and you're going to have cooler shadows on a sunny day versus the warm light areas where the sun is hitting. So these colors that are in shadow, including the tabletop, I've deliberately used colors keeping in mind the color of the object that are going to describe them as being in shadow. Now, it's going to be a much cooler color. In the case of the red flowers, for example, it really depends on the scene. For example, if you're painting red roses draped over a fence, you might find that some of those reds are going to be magentas in the shadow areas, because magenta is very leaning into the blue. So that might be your choice. Cad Red Deep is one of those colors that has a purple leaning and undertone. Possibly, depending on what's around it, that could be the shadow color for the red. I'm doing this in Photoshop, and I'm kind of just choosing colors. There's no names for the colors that I chose. I just came as close as I could to a color that I might use in pigment. And I was kind of thinking alizarin crimson, which alizarin crimson is a great color for going either warm or cool, depending on, where you're using it. And that's something to keep in mind with colors in general, is depending on what they're next to can determine whether they're warm or cool. Typically with white objects, a starting color for the shadow areas is going to be some type of blue. And often I will use something like a manganese because it's got a little warmth to it, but it's still a blue. As you progress and you start to develop your painting, some of the subtle nuances are going to be factored in, but not until you get this part right. So as you can see, this tablecloth even though you've got folds and transparent areas and, there's all these different facets, I've treated it pretty much as just one solid color. And it isn't until you get into what's called second notes that you start refining. You start, molding the different areas. So, for example, this part, I potentially can see some reflection that I don't know what's reflecting on it. There could be a little bit of a violet-y type of tone hitting this green cloth. Same thing, well, not same thing. This has actually got it's lighter, and getting some reflected light from somewhere. Obviously, this is darker than this is darker than this. All of those things, then you go in and you refine after, but you wait. That is not something you do at this very beginning stage. You want to keep everything as simple as possible, keeping in mind value differences, color differences or hue, temperature difference. So an example of temperature difference is these two greens. These two greens are very close in value, if not exactly the same in value. In fact, when I squint my eyes, which is a key thing in minimizing detail, seeing value more correctly, it's a very important factor in painting. These are really the same value, but they're different from each other because this is cool and this is warm. So that's a difference with color or colors, depending on what they're next to, that you have to be watching and keeping in mind. So this is just a little bit of an overview of what we are trying to achieve, and we want to keep it very, very simple. As you can see, I didn't break any leaves down. I didn't, I kept this, even though you see variations in here, you got a little darker and a little lighter, and then you got the light. I didn't do all that at this point. I just kept it one solid shape. That's comes next. Same thing in here. Really, both of these, there's reflected light in there, and you're going to see the reflection of the red in this vase. You're going to see some reflection of the green from the plant over here. Even in here, even though this is a different type of substrate than this, there's still reflection happening from the greenery into this wooden vase, or whatever you want to call it, planter. So all of that part comes into play after you have your shapes and your values and all the things that I've mentioned started first. Then you go in and you start modeling, and this is where your squinting comes into play, because even with your greens over here and your red reflection over here and a little bit of the green reflecting in this part of the vase, this is still one value range. Very little does it get like a little bit lighter here because of this very light sunlit blasted flower, but overall, for the most part, all of this is still one pretty consistent value. Same thing with here. So when we get into painting these different color nuances that are being reflected into that and into either of these, you have to keep that value the same in order to keep the depiction of the light quality that's happening in this particular instance. So I just wanted to go over this real quick. We talked about this in the Q&A, and hopefully I remember to record future ones, because that's the plan, so that if you can't make it, you get to see this. But This was what we talked about today, and hopefully that's helpful. If you do set up a still life, which I encourage you to do, and work from life, I would try to set something up that you can keep in its place until you've painted it as much as you desire to paint it. I'm not saying until you finish it, because it's not important to finish it at this point. What's important is your start. So if you can, keep a still life set up somewhere, paint it at the same time of day or under the same light conditions. So if, for example, you can't paint during the day and you can only paint at night with incandescent light, then keep your light there, keep everything the same so that you can train your eye, which is what still life is very helpful for. They are a great training ground. And it's also convenient because you can keep a still life and control the lighting, pretty consistently, versus going out painting a scene somewhere that you have less control over. So hopefully that you get to do this, and you also get to join us in the group. And I look forward to seeing everyone next time. And what you do, post it in the group. See you later.